Welcome to Blueprints for Brilliance Coaching Insights, a podcast by coaches for coaches. Our guests share their hard-won wisdom to help you grow your coaching business and create a life of success. So get ready to unlock the blueprints to your success. Thanks for joining us today. I'm excited to have a very special person here today. His name is JP Marsh. He is a co-parenting coach, and I am going to welcome you, JP Marsh, to our podcast and have you tell people a little bit about you.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm a co-parenting coach, mostly with co-parents and in that sort of realm, but relationships are relationships. So how you do one thing is how you do everything. Typically, if you're unable to do very well in a co-parenting relationship, your friendship relationships give and take and maybe toxic or less fulfilling ways, same as business relationships. If you're letting one person railroad you, then odds are you're a people pleaser and everybody's railroading you. And it's a lot of specific tools towards co-parents because that's where I came through and into the coaching space and was coached and had mentors and help. But everything begins with you. It all depends on your mindset, your wants, needs, boundaries, how you communicate, and all these different things. The foundation for most all coaches is some sort of mindset and
attitude
and
openness.
There's a certain willingness to want to be different, to want to change yourself, to want to have better relationships with your kids, the other parent, and everything else. The better you can navigate personalities and negotiate day in, day out with everybody that you're dealing with, not in a selfish way to benefit the most, but to empathize with other people's wants, needs, boundaries, these, those, and the others.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my realm. Yes.
Excellent. So I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about how you came to be a co-parenting coach. Obviously, this is very personal for you, and there was a journey from where you were to helping others. So tell us a little bit about that.
The concept of the coaching or mentoring or getting outside advice from somebody who has no chips in the game, you know what I mean? That they're not vested one way or the other. So the whole concept for me was easy to grasp. From a young age, my dad got sober when I was like 5 years old. And so we had spent a lot of time, because that's what you did in the 80s when somebody got sober. And in AA, they have sponsors, which is somebody 3 to 5 years ahead of you on the same journey, helping you avoid pitfalls, booby traps, help you with your mental shifts, thought processes, do's, don'ts, these. And it's usually somebody that went through the exact same thing. Maybe not identical, but in the general aspect of it. So then as I became growing up in a system like that and watching it work over and over and over, then when I started getting in the realms of other coaches and other mentors and other people that were doing this online, because obviously when I was a kid, the internet wasn't a thing. So there wasn't online sober partners, sober buddies, sponsors, that kind of stuff. But knowing that you're not limited to your community or your groups, which is a concept I recognize a lot more because I live in a very rural area in a very small community. And even if you're trying to get somebody to help you in person, you're rolling the dice whether or not they're going to align personality wise. I'm fairly short, to the point. This is what it is. You're the problem. You're being an issue in this situation. They're reacting. You're instigating, that kind of stuff. And which works for really well for the people that it works really well for, but not so much for people who need to be more coddled with the loving, oh, it's okay, you'll do. And the internet has made it easier to find your type of personality that you can be more receptive with. And then as I got older and needed help in different areas of my life, and most of mine was childhood trauma and baggage that was unresolved that led into lots of problems through my teenage years, through my 20s. Then we had our daughter. We split up after she turned 2. And then I was starting at 0, but I couldn't do it alone. And you move in with your parents when you get divorced or split up because one person's got to move out of the house that you share. And so then you get to your parents' house. My dad ended up dying a couple weeks after. So I became a single parent, lost my father all within 3 weeks of each other.
That's hard.
Then I'm trapped at my mom's house, stuck with her grief, dealing with my grief, dealing with my new reality and all these different things. And so I went into a bit of a depression or a funk, you know what I mean? All I basically did was go to work and go home. And then outside of that, I hung out with my daughter, and that was the consistence of my entire life. I didn't socialize and I didn't go out. Nothing. And then as I started wanting my situation and my reality to change and started doing work and research and learning, and then I got connected with different mentors and different coaches to help me change my perspective on things and change my mindset on things and identify the things that were tripping me up and thought processes that were always making the self-sabotaging and the low self-worth and all of these different things that had been I've been dragging since I was a small child, because that's all these feelings that I was dragging around as an adult that were leading to situations that I was reacting to instead of responding in. And so, because I had low self-worth and all these different things, I would fall right back into the self-sabotaging, which would fall back into the pity party and the poor me and the numbing myself with alcohol and all these different things. And so the more that I worked with coaches and worked with other people and had somebody's outside opinion that wasn't judgmental, wasn't judging me, wasn't necessarily involved in my life outside of helping me identify my triggers and pitfalls and why I was doing these things and those things. And then it just snowballed into where the AA mindset kind of came in once I got to where, my co-parenting relationship was doing really well, and we would go places and people would always constantly come up and be like, God, like, I wish me and my kids is so and so or my so and so were like you guys. And it was like, we weren't this way at the beginning. It takes a lot of work, but it's, if you can get out of your own way, leave your own pity party, put your kids first, it's everything else will fall into line. But if you're in this addictive pity party, I'm the victim, I'm going to fight with you, not grieve the relationship ending, and all these different things that kind of play into it, then you get stuck and you're stuck in that place. So then the more people came up to us, because we sit by each other at the dance recitals and the school functions and do holidays and the barbecues and lake trips. And my daughter's in a blended family now. So it's like me, her mother, her stepdad, stepbrother, his ex-wife, her husband, and their kid. And then there's other families that are all with us too, but it's all of us because we're all just adults.
Yeah. Wow. That is quite a big crowd. It's so important and so valuable for her to see these relationships that maybe didn't work out together, but that are all still supporting her in her journey to figuring out who she is.
And so then, as far as the coaching part of it, then it became a deal where everybody would come up and ask me for advice in this situation, that situation, this situation. How did you guys get through this? We were talking about it a little bit ago. I had a lot more in-person, real-life people that I worked with, like a sponsor in AA and stuff like that, because the people that were around, the other parents of just kids my daughter's age, or friend of a friend, or somebody who knows her stepdad, or works with those guys, or this or that just has a train wreck of a deal, or so then a lot of people would give me a call and be like, hey, is it cool if I give this person your number? They got a whole bunch of stuff going on with their ex. And then as I've kept scaling or evolving, then it's become, now I have more people that I work with online than I do in person, which when you live in a town of 6,000 people, there's only so many people around, because you're still just in the same adage that you can't force somebody to get sober, no matter how good of a sponsor you are. You're not going to force somebody to take a look at themselves in the mirror and do some real introspection and realize that they may be the problem, and that even knowing maybe they don't think they're the problem, there are ways that you can adjust your interacting and the way that you approach the other person and the way that you respond and do all these things to the other parent to make things better. And there's something to be said about civility, but you have to want things to be different and to make changes, and you have to be coachable in the fact that you have to be willing to accept the fact that you are just as guilty for any aspect of it as you want to blame them. And it's easy to say that they need to change, but you have to change first, because if you're not doing these things that say maybe they are the one that pushes your buttons and triggers you and does all these things, but if you don't know what your triggers are, you're not going to be able to avoid them.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't make those changes, it's just going to keep repeating. And if they're looking for a reaction, if you keep falling into that trap and giving them that reaction, then that's just the cycle. But once you quit giving that reaction that they're looking for, then it takes time, but slowly they're going to stop looking for it because they're not getting it anymore. And that's one of the things that you have to be willing to bite the bullet in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I love that. You're so right. Somebody has to want to change. They have to want to make their situation better, because, like you said, it's not easy at all. And there's a lot of things, like you said, you have to reflect about yourself that aren't working or that you need to change. And so I think that's with anyone who works with a coach. You mentioned you have to be coachable, and that's so true. You have to want to get better more than you want to stay where you are.
Right.
And I love the fact that you got your own coaches, and therefore they helped you move forward. They helped you realize, because I don't know if people realize that a lot of these challenges and frustrations and like head knocking, it's going on in your head. You're telling yourself a story about what's happening and where this is coming from. So I would think that a lot of it is building up the person's confidence and making them feel like, yeah, you can attack me, but if I don't care, then it doesn't hurt me. It's when
Right.
I care. So you have to build up that resilience in
Right.
people. So tell us a
And
little bit about how you help people do that.
it takes time. We live in the age of the internet and instant gratification, and it's not like when I was a kid where if you wanted strawberries, you had to wait for strawberries to be in season, and then you go to the store and you buy strawberries because they're in season. Now you can get them delivered to your house pretty much 24 hours a day. If you live somewhere with a 24-hour Safeway, Walmart, that kind of deal. It's knowing that you're going to get frustrated, knowing that the longer that it's been going on, just like an injury, the longer it's going to take to heal. If you're running a business and your business is falling apart and you've been band-aiding it for 10 years, it's going to take a lot longer to fix every boo and underneath every band-aid than if you reach out and get a coach or get a auditor or something like that when the first band-aid. And so understanding that nothing's fast. Nobody plans on going to the gym once and then having a six-pack when they walk out. And it's the same kind of thing because you're doing mental exercises and exercising responses and exercising communication and boundary setting and not crossing boundaries. A lot of it is, at least with the co-parenting specifically, a lot of the interactions are reacting, not responding. So like getting people to acknowledge that and to make changes with that, especially in this day and age, because everything's through text or everything's through email or messenger or something like that. Especially if you're in a high conflict kind of deal where you're fighting all the time, nobody's calling each other on the phone. And it's really easy to take any message and run it through your emotional filter rather than your logic. And so then typically a lot of people will end up reacting to it instead of responding to it. So journaling's a big deal. Like at least, and even for me, it took me a long time because I was reacting to everything. I was living in my state of defensiveness to where no matter what it was said, what happened, I would instantly get defensive and I'd snip something, I'd get something back. We'd do that back and forth for 3 or 4 days, and then it'd turn into a big blow up come the weekend or a week later. So I had to start, unless it needed an urgent answer, I had to start writing down what I was going to send back in a small journal, like a notebook, and then leave it. And then I would come back like an hour later or 2 hours later, read what I was planning on sending. And then I would make the decision whether or not that was still the response I wanted to send. Because then it gave me enough time to step away, let my nervous system level out, let my emotional cloud in my mind dissipate, and then come back and see what my response was for what my response was. Not so much what I was responding to, because then it's just going to redo that till you can really train yourself. It's just going to flood you back with those emotions. I would say 9 times out of 10, whatever I was planning on sending as a snap response was usually a reaction and not something that I really wanted to send, because it had it was me being a baby more so than trying to fix or answer
Yeah,
so it's little things like that.
I think that's a great practice for anyone. When somebody pushes your buttons like that, you want to snap back at them because that's just a reaction, a defense mechanism.
Right.
But when you can stop, I love that you write it down and then you walk away, do something else, and you come back with a more rational mind. And you can say, does this really make sense? Is this going to move anything forward? So I love that. I love that practice. That's brilliant.
And then one of the other biggest thing that I get people to do right off the bat, which makes a huge difference. And it makes sense to me, but they think it's like a Jedi mind trick kind of deal, is I tell people to stop. I never call my daughter's mother my ex. And that's the first thing that they have to stop doing, of all the people that I work with. And then getting them to realize the entire energy shift when it's no longer your ex and it's your kid's other parent. Because every way that you view that person changes, because you're not viewing them through the lens of they hurt me, they left me, they won in court, I have to pay them, you know what I mean? It takes you and them out of the equation and it puts the kid first. And so then it softens them up, and it makes it easier softens them up as a concept. So it makes it easier to talk to them. You know what I mean? Even if they're not there, say if I'm like us right now, if I call my daughter's mom my ex, you always get that little, oh, they're in a bad, oh, in any group that you're talking to. But if you just say, oh, my daughter's mom, then it's a completely different energy around the whole situation. And so then you're not inviting, if you say, oh, my ex, and say, if I'm talking to somebody that knows us all, that invites them to be able to give criticism on her or to be able to, oh, they're not in a good spot. You know what I mean? Like things that may not even be my business or some things I don't even want to hear because it just invites the negativity.
Yeah. And you put an X through something that you don't want or that you dismiss.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, that makes perfect sense. Because then when you say my daughter's mother, then it now, like you said, your focus is on your daughter. I love that. Oh my gosh. So tell me a little bit, do you work with both men and women or just men?
Men and women. There's outside of specific instance to type stuff, the parallels of the obstacles, the way that they view each other, the stuff that they're not processing, dealing with, getting over, pretty parallel at different stages. It depends on, the bigger factor is they're both running the race, but they both started at a very different time. Because usually one person checked out of the relationship a lot earlier than the relationship ended. So you have one that's starting over, starting a life, starts dating a lot sooner than the other ones even dealt with the shell shock of it ending. And so at different stages, you're hitting these different things. But some of the obstacles, usually both sides need to leave their pity party and realize that the other parent is the other parent and they need to be involved. They have just the same amount of right to see their kids all the time. And whatever happened between the two of you, outside of actual court involvement, abuse, stuff like that, drug addiction, you're just stuck in your own feelings and your own pity party. And that's why you're bickering back and forth about who should see the kids and and so it's men and women.
Yeah, everybody needs to reel themselves in a little bit, maybe. This has been fantastic, JP. You are a wealth of information. I can see why people are coming to you for help, and we're grateful that there are people out there like you to help so many others.
Thank you.
If people want to reach out to you because they're in a bad situation, a bad relationship, bad co-parenting situation, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Instagram is just JPMRSH. But I'd already said social media is not my biggest. It doesn't light me up. It's not something I spend a lot. Instagram is a place where it's pretty much all for this. And then if somebody sends me a message, it doesn't get lost in the shuffle. It's not a deal where I go on Instagram to do anything other than the co-parenting thing and the coaching thing. And so that's the easiest place to reach me, get a hold of me. And then if you send me a message, I'll reply.
Okay, we'll put that in the show notes so everybody has easy access to that and they can find you. One last question for you. If you could provide one tip to make the world a better place, what would that be?
Communication and difficult conversations. It's the thing that I lacked the most that made my life the toughest was not being able to communicate in a healthy way and my wants, needs, boundaries, expectations, feelings. I just wasn't closed off. No matter, regardless how I thought, I wasn't a very good communicator. And then especially when it came to difficult conversations, as far as being deserving of raises or the wants, needs, expectations, boundaries in relationships and all of these different areas. And for me, everybody asks me all the time, everybody's always worried like that they're going to screw their kids up. And it's always, they are. I hate to say it, but everybody does. So I've tried to equip my daughter with enough tools to where when she is older and needs to process whatever perceived trauma and baggage and stuff that she's carrying around from childhood, whether it be because of me, because of her mom, because of her, because of nothing that has to do with anything other than the emotional state when somebody said something to her and that kind of stuff, that she's able to have difficult conversations and be able to confront these different things. And especially going through life, being able to communicate fairness, relationships. Nobody wants to see their kids in toxic relationships or not be able to communicate at all and then just start numbing themselves with drugs and alcohol and do all these different things because they don't know how to communicate or receive the stuff that they need to feel fulfilled because they don't know how to communicate effectively.
Yep, absolutely. I have no doubt that you have taught your daughter a lot of important things, from seeing difficult situations to seeing how they can be repaired and how things can work out. And that's almost one of the most important things you can teach kids. JP, it has been such a pleasure. Again, we are grateful for people out there like you helping others handle their relationships healthy and ultimately helping your kids. So thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us today on Blueprints for Brilliance Coaching Insights. We hope you're leaving this episode with inspiration to take your coaching business and your life to the next level. If you found value in this episode, we would love it if you would subscribe and share it with someone else who you think might benefit from hearing it. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next episode.